fellow scientist. Uh, oh, no, that's okay. So just like we had Alec introduced that he's a scientist working on his, well, he's a PhD candidate now. Yes.
Well, I'll say I haven't technically elevated to candidacy, but my oral exam is coming up, and I don't expect there to be any issues because I have.
I don't expect any issues either. Yes. So excellent. Excellent. So he is on the physicist side, and I'm an evolutionary biologist, and on the evolutionary biology, anthropology, and on the historical side, as as well as some of the other areas that I dabble in. My friend Mark Dockery, would you mind introducing yourself briefly? And I'm afraid he will be modest, so I will have to correct whatever few things that he says there.
My name is Mark Dockery. I'm the founder of Justice Coin. That's justicecoin.io if you're interested in checking it out. It is also the home of the Human Potential Index, which are the solutions that I put forth into the world to answer some of what we're going to be talking about today. And I am Lee Greer's brother from another mother, obviously. If you can't tell by the hair.
Yes, absolutely. He's also a documentary filmmaker and a sound engineer. I told you he was going to be modest and that I would have to correct the record. So update, yes.
And I'm Laura Luna. I'm a mystic, and I'm coming from a matriarch point of view. I'm the chair of Women's Fed at UU Church, and I'm representing women.
Laura Luna is the chair of Women's Fed. She says that means, for those of you who are visitors, Women's Federation, which is one of the oldest organizations associated with the UU Church of Riverside. It's older than the name UU. Okay, the Universalist Unitarian as a combination here. All right, and also sound-wise, we had input from the audience, the ones who are remote. If you will speak up slower and more distinctly, if you need to make adjustments to your microphones, that would be important. So I just want to introduce myself in starting this series and reaching out to friends to start this series. It was from a feeling of desperation of several months. Well, actually, I've been involved in indigenous issues, both with Native Americans for many years, and also interested in the Middle East. On my mother's side, my grandparents were genocide survivors of the Armenian Holocaust, and on that side, I discovered by DNA that there is also a connection, a Jewish Armenian connection there, as well as the Greek from my grandmother. So we're, at least within my particular heritage on my mother's side, we encompass two of the three Abrahamic religions, Christianity and Judaism. And somebody loved somebody across that barrier on my mother's side, okay? And there is animosity between Judaism and Christianity, and between Judaism and Armenian Christianity. Okay, we know this from the history of genocide within our own family. We know the situation there. Also, this is a long process. So I just want to let you know that also, as a child, I have seen the war up close. I watched Lebanese military jets bombing Palestinian camps when I was a little boy. Okay, and I've heard the artillery and everything in Lebanon. That was at the time when the war was in Lebanon. my father is from Texas, and my mom is the Middle East, and they met in California. Where else, right? So, okay, I want to share a few little things about where we are as of today. As of today, okay, of course, this is part of a long human story. The paradigm we are working with here in this case, particularly, and let's be really clear that there have been indigenous people and variants of the name Palestine since the second millennium. And it's always been a multi-ethnic, multi-religious. And the indigenous people of Syro-Palestine go back long before any of the countries named or anything like that. It is a toponym. Palestine is a toponym. It's the name of a place that goes back to the second millennium. Okay, and it has had many inhabitants who also, as someone who traces DNA ancestries, by the way, tracing DNA ancestries and sharing that on social media and everything is illegal in the state of Israel. It is illegal because there is an ethno-state there. And the truth is revealed because the molecules don't have an agenda. They just tell what really happened, you see. So, oh yeah, that's right. That's correct. It is illegal. And we also, there's also of the four groups of Jewish groups that live in the world today, the Ashkenazim, of course, were mentioned, the Sephardim, which are mostly from the Iberian Peninsula, Morocco, and Northern Africa. The Mizrahi, of course, are the Middle Eastern Jews, which are very often of Arabic language, as well as their religious Hebrew, which they've kept up, and Aramaic. And then, of course, there are the Ethiopian Jews, which actually have been victimized by the state of Israel through forced Depo-Provera shots to prevent births among them. That has been unofficially acknowledged now. So it is a tiered system there. It is an apartheid state. And Patrick Wolf, has done the definitive study, not only on this, but on settler colonialism everywhere. It's settler colonialism and the elimination of the native in the Journal of Genocide research. That is also linked from my website, Enlightenment Legacy. And of course, yes. Well, the reasons that they have given is that it could cause trauma and could endanger the state of Israel. Yes, because people might discover that their ancestry is not really Middle Eastern, but is somewhere else. You see. No, that they wouldn't feel like they were really at home, as it were. As Alec was explaining this morning, he could make use of the right of return. And if he did that, I think he's almost too old to do that now.
Probably, I'm not sure, actually.
I think 25 is the cutoff. That's right. So he would be told as he landed there, welcome home. Okay, that's what he would be told. Okay. And many of those, of course, it's important.
Welcome home in the desert of the Middle East. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
yes. That's right. That's right. With his lovely, red hair, right? Light skin. Okay, welcome home, right? Okay. By the way, like Australia and its European settlers, Israel and its European settlers have some of the highest rates of skin cancer. Why? The skin color tells where indigeneity is. Indigenous means from an area. Okay. So, and also many Palestinians have changed in their ancestry, have changed religion 3 times. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, that they're still indigenous Palestinians. So there are Palestinian Jews, have been for for hundreds of years, Palestinian Christians for hundreds and thousands of years, and Palestinian Muslims also well over 1,000 years. Okay, all three have lived side by side, mostly in peace during this time. There are those who want you to think that there's an eternal death struggle between these religions. No, most people just want to live in peace despite the religious mythologies. My own biases, which I will uncover, and my own standpoint is the standpoint of the Enlightenment, which goes back the European, the Islamic, Arabic Enlightenment, and the ancient Greeks who started the methods of science. So those are my commitments. I've openly state my commitments from the beginning. I am a refugee from the Abrahamic religions, and like Thomas Paine, I disbelieve them all. I'm not part of that tradition. Okay, so yeah, of course. So that is the tradition which I honor, standing on that shoulder. And of course, I honor the heretics from each of those religions which were founders of the Enlightenment. And I've picked three. These are three prominent ones. They aren't by no means the only ones. Ibn al-Arabi, okay, from the Islamic tradition, Giordano Bruno, and Benedict Spinoza. They want to claim him back in Judaism now, but he gave up his name Baruch. He took the name Benedict. Okay, today he would be charged as an anti-Semite by the ADL, even though he's one of the greatest anti-defamation league. Yes, and he is one of the greatest Jewish thinkers of the past 2 millennia. Okay, one of the greatest. Okay, not in keeping with the religion. He rejected the religion and all of the other religions too. Okay, and so, and all three of these, of course, all three of these were considered heretics in their own tradition, and the one that suffered the worst fate was Giordano Bruno, who largely for his views about God, less so about his views in cosmology, which were also heretical, but they were tied with his views about God. He was burned in 1600, burned alive by the Church of Rome. Oh, okay, so, and of course, we're talking about settler colonial states are expanded genocidal displacement. Here is our own settler colonial state and how it is expanded, and here is the one that we're discussing here. Like father, like son, right? You know. Yes, and that visual which says now is already out of date. That is out of date. When we talk about one state solution, we talk about, and those who are advocating, including Jewish Voice for Peace and so forth, who are advocating a one state solution now, is equal rights for all the people that live within the borders of an unbroken historic Palestine. That equal rights, okay? And the right of return for whoever wishes to live there, Jewish, Christian, or Muslim. Okay, that, of course, is against the project that is called the Zionist Project. Okay, and here are some of the great views. I want you to also know that there's a very important distinction, and I very much resent this, and every one of us should, for clinical reasons, not just emotional reasons. The identity of a political ideology like Zionism, as if speaking for all Jews or people of Jewish heritage, religion, or background, is itself anti-Semitic, because it furthers the trope that one nation above the countries where people of Jewish heritage live all over the world has their loyalty above the loyalty to their own country, which is an old anti-Semitic trope. Let's also deconstruct the term anti-Semitic. There are 30 Semitic languages and dialects. It's a type of language. It is not a type of bloodline or anything like that. It is so anti-Semitism is a 19th century nationalistic term that was invented by anti-Semites or people who hated Jews. Okay. People that are in the Middle East, including Arabic, and Amharic, and you can go down Ethiopic, and you can just go down the list of multiple languages and dialects and language groups they have the characteristics that historical linguists call Semitic. Now, where does the term Semite come from, or Semitic comes from? It's also from biblical mythology about someone named Shem, okay, who is supposed to. So it also is out of date, not based on historical realities, okay? Now, I am personally involved in Near Eastern archaeology in my research, including the DNA part of it, okay? And we have colleagues all over who are uncovering the truth about these things. And I can tell you, as I mentioned last time, I have a dear colleague of mine that finished her PhD recently at Bar Ilan University in Israel, and she knows of a scientist in Israel who will not publish the ancient DNA he has. It's Natufian, and it's in ancient historic Palestine. He will not publish it because reasons, right? Political reasons. Okay. So, however, we already know this. Of course, there are great colleagues there who are open, like El Hayek, all right, and Shlomo Sand, he's retired, who have pointed out many of these issues, and they face deep issues as a result. Now, we are at this. Of course, we won't go through all the international law there, but where are we right here? Just a reminder that we can see the discriminatory system from space, okay? You can see the lack of water. These are not natural barriers here. You can see where the water is being taken and left, and who is being left without. The sin of apartheid, and I'm someone, or the crime of apartheid, which, because it is an international law now, all right, can be seen from outer space. Okay, it can be seen. There it is, very, very definitely there. You can see that. You're seeing green and less green. Theft of water, theft of land. No, along this artificial boundary of the West Bank and the rest of Palestine, as well as, of course, green, greener, green. And these two big bulges here that are less green mark the occupied territories. You can see it from space. There is nothing natural geographically about that. This is what theft of resources looks like from space. Okay. All right. This is what Gaza looks like before the war. Okay. Before. Okay. And this current war. Well, the war is actually eight decades. Well, it's actually 9 or 10 decades since the Peel Commission of the 1930s. Okay, but it's a long war. When Britain, the government of Britain gave the land of one people to another people and all that stuff, a third people, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, well, right here, of course, here is this. This is what things look like now. This is before and after, okay? Surgical strikes, shall we say, right? Okay, and here is the statistics as of yesterday in the current round, okay? Statistics of the current round of bloodletting until February, yesterday. 35,000 killed, and that is an underestimate. These are conservative figures because there are thousands buried under rubble. We can pretend they're still alive. They aren't, okay? For the most part, they aren't alive. Displaced, etc. You can go through the statistics. We include the hostages on both sides, politically captured and held people against their will are hostages on both sides, okay? Far fewer Israelis are held, of course, in Gaza than thousands who are held in Israeli prisons and dungeons. Yes? Oh, destroyed in industrial facilities, destroyed schools, destroyed healthcare places. Yes, 2 million are already internally displaced. Of course, some of them are displaced more than once over, right? Displaced more than once over because they've already displaced. They didn't come from Gaza, they came from Hebron and other places, but were driven into Gaza in various stages. The Nakba of 48, 67, of post there, and now, of course, this is internally displaced.
So
Please.
I'll just read what it says there for you.
Oh,
So
please,
that
yeah.
says, then those first four is 35,000 killed, 67,000 injured, 121 journalists killed, and that's the 2 million displaced.
Correct. And those are completely destroyed homes, 79,000, nearly 80,000. Yes. Go, please. Sure, question. Yes. Yes. Yep. Yeah, I think it's down to, it was 200 and a bit, and now it's down to 100, and I'm something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, correct. There are children as young as 12 years old arrested for throwing rocks and serving 10 to 20-year sentences. Yes, correct. Nope, well, that's where we will differ according to international law. Yeah, that would, when we say hostages, these are people who are held, many of them without judicial. We in our country take for granted due process of law, these Enlightenment values. There is a continuing way where you can go into what is called administrative detention under the Tel Aviv regime. Yes, correct. All right, where you can go into administrative detention without any trial, and they just have to renew that every six months. So there are people that have been held for sometimes years without any judicial proceedings, except someone just, I include them too. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. They've not been convicted, and even in some cases, like the teenager, the Ahed Tamimi, the Palestinian teenager who at 16 years of age, Israeli soldier, was in her home, and she slapped him in the face. She served an 18-month sentence for that. She slapped him in the face. She slapped an Israeli soldier who was in her home. Okay. Oh, well, because that's common thing that happens.
That's how you get them out of the home.
Yeah, that's how you get people out of the home, is you go in there and you do these late night raids or etc. Sweep up children, sweep up whoever. That's exactly right. She served 18 months. Correct. Go ahead.
I'd also like to add, to use more of our American sensibilities, here in this country, if someone is arrested without being Mirandized, we consider that to be a violation of their rights. And we're not currently holding Israel to anywhere near the same standard.
Yeah, I mean, even close. I mean, light years might be inappropriate to use a physics. Yes. Yes, that is correct. It is the largest, and it was described by an Israeli social scientist as the largest open air prison in the world. It has since been called the largest concentration camp in the world. Now it has become what could be called a ghetto or a camp being liquidated. That is what is happening now. A liquidation of the ghetto, as a German Jewish activist called it, and immediately, of course, had the ADL attacking her, so. Since long before that, but it was much more acute. Correct. And it's very important to remember that the Palestinians are at the bottom rung of things, and depending on where you are, but that Jewish people, Israeli Jewish citizens of Israel of darker color, are discriminated against, and there's a hierarchy there. And at the very bottom of that is Ethiopian Jews, who have been, well, we're going to, yeah. Now, South Africa has brought a case before the International Court of Justice against the Republic of South Africa, against the state of Israel, starting back in early December. Well, they gave warnings well before that and tried to communicate with Israel. The hearings were held on January 11th. South Africa presented its case, and then Israel responded to this case before the International Court of Justice. And I want you, and we heard about the example of nonviolent resistance between 2018 and 2021. The Great March of Return that happened out of the prison camp of Gaza happened for multiple days every Friday. Peaceful, nonviolent marches to the fence. They were picked off by Israeli snipers. That went on for multiple times before whatever happened, the various things that happened on October 7th. So, as well as the first Intifada was also of that round. Yeah, sure. Yes.
That what you were talking about, peaceful march and being shot at by snipers.
Yes.
But that's part of I can't think of the word, but what was happening leading up to the kidnapping of the Israeli people and the attack of Hamas. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct.
What was called riots, after King.
Yes.
All of that, and it was looking at what was building up, what was it that was contributing to the final outburst of frustration.
Yes, and one has to remember that this has been an old tactic, is that both Hamas and Hezbollah have used hostage taking as a way of doing prisoner exchanges with Israel, and Israel's been doing this for back and forth. They've been talking with each other back and forth for years. This has gone on, okay. And that's what this particular was. Usually it's been the Israeli military. And let's be really clear now that we know exactly we're much closer to understanding what happened on October 7th. That's a big topic there, is that most of the people that were killed on October 7th, a majority of them, and that were attacked were IDF, Israeli Defense Forces. Okay, and some of those civilians killed that day were killed by friendly fire. We know this today, and not what you'll hear in the mainstream media, but independent investigations. Yes. Why? No, it did not just so happen to be. No. They targeted the Al-Qassam brigades, which are the armed wing of Hamas, right, which is a political party in Gaza. The attacks, and there were others that followed them that were not part of the same disciplined group, right? Okay, their attacks on October 7th, okay, were primarily against IDF military installations of particularly of the Golani Brigade, which was, and other brigades which were down on the Golani is ordinarily up in occupied Syria, but there were those that were down below along the Gaza border, okay, and kibbutzim, which are like camps, which were down there, which ironically included people who were part of the peace movement within Israel. There is a small and very beleaguered peace movement within Israel, getting more and more beleaguered all the time because they're regarded now as traitors and so forth in some cases. Okay, so here was the International Criminal Court. Here were the hearings. Okay, here is the South African legal team, and here is the State of Israel's legal team. Here is the International Criminal Court, which has 15 judges, and then there were 16, well, actually, let's see, 17 judges because there was a chosen judge that ad hoc, they're called an ad hoc judge, that was chosen by each country that is a signatory of the Genocide Convention. And both Israel and South Africa are signatories of the Genocide Convention. Okay, and so it was a case between countries that was brought. And by the way, you can read all of this on my website. I have all of the documents, and I've analyzed the actual. And what South Africa presented was a case for provisional measures, not asking them to make a final determination, but a plausible case that there are violations of the Genocide Convention happening in the current foray against Gaza. Okay, and the presiding judge is this lady here, okay, Judge Donahue, and she is American. Okay, so this is a multinational group. She happened to be the presiding judge in this case. Here she is, right here, and here are the judges at the International Court of Justice, President Donahue, and the various ones from Russia, China, France, Australia, Brazil, Germany, India, Jamaica, etc., all the way, including Lebanon, Slovakia, Uganda, Japan, and so forth. And then the two ad hoc judges, one from Israel and one from South Africa. Okay, so now let me just show you what the result of the court case was. Yeah,
We had a question from Nick.
question from Nick.
We all know Israel's policy towards aggression. That's clear.
Uh-huh.
Hamas, who has hijacked Palestine, attacks, and now, because Israel is standing up for itself, we're condemning them and making Palestine out to be the heroes. I think this is wrong-sidedness.
Well, first of all, there aren't any. It isn't heroes in a particular case, but let's just clarify the question. The question is one of occupation under international law. Okay, it just so happens that the occupiers in international law in the area in which they're occupying, okay, they actually can't claim self-defense. They get whatever is coming to them at that point. Okay, that's an important point too. Okay, sure. So let's just say that I'm a burglar, okay, and I come into Pat's house. Okay, Pat actually allows my family and me to swim in her pool, but so we are invited there. We have an invitation. But let's just say that I come in there, okay, and Pat, seeing someone that looks rather threatening and dangerous like me, right, in the middle of the night, okay, I say, no, oh no, wait, I have a stake in your house. Part of your house is actually mine, okay? If I don't have a right to claim self-defense if she defends herself as the occupied against me as the occupier. I can't say, oh, hey, don't hurt me, because I'm in her house. So if she exercises self-defense against me and wounds me or kills me, okay, while in her house, I can't say, oh, that's not fair. That's what we're talking about. And that's under international law, meaning the treaties, especially that were drawn up after the horrors of World War II. Correct. I would be the Israeli coming into her home, into her part, yes, into Palestine, and saying, okay, now some will say, well, Gaza is not really occupied. Yes, it is. If it's surrounded and nothing can go in or out, and they put the people on a diet there, this is literally using Israeli government language, and they periodically mowed the lawn, which meant aerial bombardment massacres that have been going on for several years. This isn't just every year, every few years, 2008, 2010, 2014, 2018, 19, 21, etc. And I've missed some smaller ones. There have been periodic, and this is the language that is used, mowing the lawn in Gaza, mowing the lawn, okay, which is to, yes. Bombing Gaza, correct, that is correct. Yeah, go ahead, you have a question there.
Israel is the leader, the president, the government, and everything of Israel and Gaza and has been for multiple years. We're not going to pretend there was a democracy in there or Hamas actually has against the government. We're doing anything to ourselves because that's just foolish.
Well, first of all, Hamas did win an election in 2005 in Gaza. And there have been no elections. So every one of the kids, who are in their early 20s, who were Al-Qassam fighters, who crossed the border, never got a chance to vote in any election. Okay, they are inmates of a concentration camp. Okay, all right, that has been in which the state of Israel has controlled everything that goes in and out. Chocolate is not involved, is not allowed in there. There are a number of little things that periodically. It's very complicated, the things that are allowed and not allowed in. Correct. Well, here's what happened. Before 2006, Fatah, which was the armed wing of the Palestine Liberation Organization, but by the way, had nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. They existed long before Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a recent list. It just means, Al-Qaeda, by the way, in Arabic just means the list. Most of them are proxies of CIA operations in the past that went rogue. Okay, like in Afghanistan and the Mujahideen and so forth, things that went wrong in Charlie Wilson's war and fighting against Soviet occupation of Afghanistan and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, the Palestine Liberation Organization under Yasser Arafat was more secular back in the 60s. Okay, Fatah, which forms the Palestinian Authority, the majority on the West Bank, are considered by most Palestinians now to be the tools of the occupiers of Israel, okay? All right, to be perfectly blunt, okay? So now, when there was danger from the standpoint of the previous Netanyahu government, this gentleman who is a follower of Jabotinsky, who is a very right-wing leader, early Zionist leader, okay, going way back under the Likud party, before the Likud party even, okay, which is the right wing of Israeli politics. Okay, he and his government wanted to foster a factionalism that would divide the Palestinian people. So his government actually helped give support to Hamas because they said, oh, they're going to resist Fatah, and then we can divide and conquer, we can split. They didn't expect Hamas to win the Gaza elections. Okay. Now, okay, it's very complicated. Now, Hamas has said some very radical things in their charter before, but when they won, and in 2006, there was an attempt by the Americans and the Israelis to overthrow the election that had occurred in Gaza. Hamas blocked that, survived the coup attempt, and offered to Israel. Let's be really clear about this. Offered to Israel, Hamas said, we will recognize the state of Israel if you go back to the 1967 borders. Okay, that's not repeated in today's news stories. Okay, that means that they agreed to a partition of Palestine. Yes, well, that means that Palestine, the state of Palestine, would be on the West Bank and on the Gaza Strip, even though it's not contiguous, and that would go back to the 1967 borders. The end of the 6 Day War. It was actually a 5-day war, and a lot of myth. Yeah,
We'll go back, and this land now will be
correct. That's no. You don't have to leave. It'll just be under a different government. Okay. Yeah, you don't have to leave. Correct. First of all, remember, for hundreds of years, Jews, Christians, and Muslims have lived together in Palestine under the Ottomans. Before that, you can go back, centuries, actually millennia. People, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of things I just wanted to add quickly. So in much the same way that someone being robbed at gunpoint doesn't have true choice in whether they didn't choose to hand over that money. I think a similar analogy can be said about the choices made by the Palestinian people, in that we see that before the 1910s, when the British created the modern state of Israel, we did not see violent clashes between religious groups in this way. But nowadays, we see that Palestinian civilians are being radicalized to join Hamas. And I think that naturally leads to the conclusion that there has to be some factor that's causing people to go in that direction. And I don't think it's fair to, and for that reason, I don't think it's fair to point at Palestine or even just Hamas and say they are the ones who started the violence before it wasn't violent, and then Hamas started the violence, even ignoring the fact that, as I had mentioned earlier, in war, there's always collateral and there's always something to get revenge for because someone went a little bit too far on the last violent escapade. Even ignoring that, I think we cannot ignore the not direct, even if the Palestinians aren't literally being pointed a gun at, even though, to be clear, they are. I don't think it's fair to simply say that those actions completely, therefore it's unjustifiable. Yeah.
Right. And by the way, decades ago, a solution was proposed by none other than the only Arab leader to ever apologize for the Arab part in the transatlantic slave trade, and that was the Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. He said there should be one state with equal rights for everybody. He even suggested a name, being a rather idiosyncratic gentleman. He called it Isra'atine. He said it should be called Isra'atine. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, Adam, and then sorry, and then Pat. Yes. India and Pakistan, correct? Yep. Yes. Correct. That's correct. Adam is making a point about the partition between India and Pakistan, right? I would like to make the same point about the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. Again, a settler colonial state in Northern Ireland when a plantation centuries ago happened. And yet even there, peace can happen. Of course, it can happen here too. So who was first on the, I'm not sure. Pat, yes, please. No, what I'm saying, no. What I'm saying, so what happened is basically the inmates of a concentration camp did an uprising and tried to break out of the concentration camp. That's what happened on October 7th. It isn't the first time that's happened. The Great March of Return was an attempt of thousands to peacefully march back into Palestine. Into Israel occupied Palestine. Well, first of all, okay, that's a big question there. First of all, the first figures that were the first figures that were quoted were 500 dead, and then 1,000 dead, and then 1,400 dead, and then even the Israelis had to back it off to 1,200. Okay, all right, because they said there were some that were burned so beyond recognition because Apache helicopters were firing that day too and killing people in the middle. Now, Hamas has never had Apache helicopters, which are American-made helicopters. Who has Apache helicopters? Who has tanks? The Israelis. Correct. And well, RPGs and AK-47s and motorcycles and whatever too, but much smaller things as well as as well as the rockets that, correct.
And regardless of what we believe is right or just, if the Israelis believe that what is right and just is to keep these people in what we would describe as a concentration camp, then they would see that them stepping outside of that as an unjust attack, as something that is unjustifiable.
Correct.
And so, but I think, looking at the Jews in concentration camps in Germany, we nowadays, looking in hindsight, would not say that would be, if they had attempted a revolt, we would not say that was unjust. So
they did, in fact, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising.
And for that reason, when I see claims from either side, I want to be clear, from either Palestinians or Israelis saying that something happened to them that was unjust, I think it is really worth considering what do they consider to be just. If what is just to them is 20 eyes for an eye, then I simply can't say that, oh well, actually it is okay for you to take a few extra lives.
Right. Let's be really clear. Jews did resist the Nazis, Jews and partisans in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. It was crushed completely disproportionately by the liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto. This is very comparable. The liquidation of Gaza is very comparable to the liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto. Correct. Yes. Sure. Yes, absolutely. Mark is right there with Justice Coyne behind him. Mark, would you unmute yourself?
Absolutely.
Yes. Would you like to throw some input in drop pearls of wisdom our way?
Sure.
But slow down and speak very clearly because our connection is not completely optimum. Okay.
Okay. Did someone ask me a question? I didn't hear.
Someone would like some input. It's not a particular question. No.
Oh, I see. Yeah, from my perspective, what I see is a population of people who have undergone a specific type of trauma. I'm speaking about Israel. And one of those traumas that they endure, pretty much on the whole, from what I understand, is an indoctrination into a mindset of superiority, of of exceptionalism, much like Americans have been sort of indoctrinated into this mindset that they're the best, and that they ought to have a certain um, amount of privilege over and above their neighboring populations. And this needs to be confronted um, in some very specific ways. I've been following for quite some time some psychologists, clinical psychologists and researchers, traumatologists who have tried to get to the bottom of this kind of uh, cult level, um, systemic level narcissism that we seem to be experiencing nowadays. Um, and there's one such researcher named Sam Vaknin who's pioneered a type of therapy called cold therapy. And in cold therapy, he basically suggests re-traumatizing the patient or the population regarding the childhood traumas that led them to be the abusive person that they are. And it's sort of not necessarily based on his research, but based on ideas like that, that I founded the Justice Coin protocols, which basically economically invert the level of economic power and authority that a population has based upon the crimes that they've committed toward neighboring populations or other populations. And then likewise, it takes surviving populations who have been survivors of historical trauma and abuse, like the Native American population that Lee spoke about when we first began. My people, the Blacks of the American experience, we also have unresolved historical damages that have been levied against us that we need to be corrected for. So Justice Coin is an effort to correct those things because, in my opinion, aside from that, we're not going to see any substantive change on this topic of settler colonial states being abusive to populations and continuing to get away with it. Because frankly, that's how our species works. We are more or less a cooperative species who desires a connection with each other. No matter our skin color or background, we desire, when we sit next to someone on the plane, we desire to know about them and see, like, wow, our paths have crossed. What is it about you that's like me? And we're constantly looking for bridges between one another. But another feature of our species, if you want to call it a feature, is we tend to abide with abusive people. We tend to yield to bullies. That's why bullies still exist, because bullies work. Abuse works. I feel like that's a t-shirt. Abuse works, and that's why people continue to employ it. And if we're going to get out of the cycle of following abusers and abiding with abusers and just letting them to continue to get away with it, we have to migrate to something like Justice Coin, which is why I founded it, because staying in their value system where they continue to be able to sway courts and sway populations and get America involved in their abuse, man, we're not going to get anywhere. When the media is constantly under pressure, someone who I wouldn't call a close friend, but person that I know who's a celebrity, you may have heard of Nick Cannon, maybe 2, 3 years ago, he lost his reputation in Hollywood because of some rather benign statements he had to say that they mistook as anti-Semitic, and because of that, he had to recant his statements and donate to the Museum of Tolerance and go through this whole dog and pony show because the media is completely like influenced by this spirit of settler colonialism, basically, defending itself and trolling us all into revalidating it. So that's what Justice Coin is about. And I guess my um, input, my chief input on this would be to be encouraged, to people like those in attendance who, we love fellowshipping with each other because we are looking for justice in the world. We may not be theists, all of us who believe in an almighty God or what have you, but we are all committed to justice, and we know that's the way to live. That's the direction we ought to be reaching for our inspiration, for how to live, for how to get on in this world together. And yeah, for people like us, it can be discouraging. Like I think David in Psalm 94, the oh Lord, how long will the wicked prevail type idea. We all have that kind of sense of burden. And I would just say to be encouraged, when you see the rubble every day and you're like, like, what this is in your heart, and we ought to respond, but we feel trapped because, Starbucks is still on every corner, and McDonald's, and all of these sort of corporate pillars that keep us in our place. I would just say be encouraged that there are things that we can do to respond to this in a substantive way. And I encourage you to take a look at justicecoin.io and get familiar with the protocol, and hope you can pick up what I'm putting down and join the Discord. I just launched the Discord server for people who are interested in joining the conversation and helping to develop the community.
Thank you so much, Mark. I guess before we wind up, you might want to hear what the decision was by the International Court of Justice. I'm just going to quickly share. So here is. Whoops, wrong thing here. Just a second. Stop share. There we are. Oh wait, here it is. Let me just make sure. Oh, that is it. Okay, so here is on the enlightenmentlegacy.org website, which goes through the various roots of the ideas that we have about human rights and so forth, and the documents there. So, as well as some of the laws going back, like the Iroquois law, the first democratic federalism in the world. Let me show you what is it? Genocide? No, that is exactly that's what the media tells you they found, but they found something else. So, and I'll show you the court case yes, I recognize that. I'm just so right here are the provisions just summarized of the Genocide Convention. 5 things that are involved is killing members of a group as such, of national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, because people are associated with that group. That's in the present convention. Causing serious bodily harm or mental harm to the members of the group. C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. Some of you, from what we just mentioned, might recognize something that's even happened to Ethiopian Jews within the state of Israel. Forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Okay, and that can mean transferring children out of the world where they're no longer here. And then, of course, the punishable crimes are genocide, conspiracy to commit genocide, direct and public incitement to commit genocide, attempt to commit genocide, and complicity in genocide. Of course, Raphael Lemkin, who coined the term genocide, he looked at Axis rule in the international, during World War II. He published it in 1944, before we even knew about, Auschwitz, Birkenau, Belzec, Treblinka, and Mauthausen, and so forth. He described what he saw as, and these 5 things here that constitute genocide is what he labeled when he saw that the Third Reich was carrying them out against targeted populations, including Polish and Slavic populations. Later realized, as well as Jewish and Roma and Soviets too. Okay, the Holocaust, of course, the Nazi Holocaust encompassed many genocides that went to multiple millions of people. And the International Court decision was this, these were the findings, okay? What they showed was 15 judges to 2, okay, that Israel would have to take measures within its power to prevent the commission of all acts of genocide. They found specifically that South Africa had made a plausible case, okay, that plausibly, this was not to rule on the merits yet, because that's something that would take a lot of time, and so they wanted to give provisional orders that could help stop the situation now. 15 to 2 that Israel had been plausibly shown to have committed 4 out of the 5 acts associated with genocide. The 2 judges that did not agree that dissented one was the Israeli judge, and one was a Ugandan judge that who dissented from every one of the decisions. 15 to 2, and number 2 was that Israel should take measures to prevent and punish the direct and public incitement to commit genocide in relation to members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip. They showed also that they recognized, despite the Israel's propaganda, which says there is no such thing as the Palestinian people, they don't exist. They said there is actually a protected group under the Genocide Convention, which is that group, and that they do exist, and that measures must be taken to prevent and punish the direct and public incitement. They pointed out, as South Africa, Israel did not publish a document in defense. South Africa published a document with 574 footnotes, intensively documenting evidence of intent to commit genocide, which is the hardest part to prosecute in genocide, is because most genocidal governments don't say, hey, guess what we're going to do? They don't say that. In this case, Israel made clear over and over again from Netanyahu, President Herzog, and members of the IDF general staff and members of the cabinet that genocidal intent was included, and it was understood that way going all the way down, including references to the supposed genocide of Amalek in the Bible, the Amalekites killing everything that moves, which Netanyahu said in a public speech. Okay. Yep.
As someone who is not a legal expert, would you say then that they concluded that it was an attempted genocide?
Yes. Genocides are almost always attempted, okay, because no one ever fully succeeds. There are some very few cases where someone has killed every member of the group. So it is an attempted genocide.
I'll also point out that this result is something that Donald Trump might describe as a complete and total exoneration.
Right.
So when we think about the media spin on these things, maybe that's something to keep in mind.
That is correct. People were there was a friend of mine who was saying, I'm trying to figure out what it means. I've been reading all these reviews. And I said, well, how about just reading the decision? Forget the reviews, read the decision itself, which is where you get the information. That's point number 3, was Israel should take all measures to prevent and punish this direct. That was 16 to 1. The only one who, even the Israeli judge said, yeah, Israel should, since it's a signatory, it should do that. Only the Ugandan judge, which has since been denounced by the government of Uganda. This doesn't represent our views. They said, this one judge, 16 to 1 on count 4, 16 to 1 on count 3 and 4, which was shall take immediate measures to enable the provision of basically needed humanitarian services. Okay, now, this is where some real guilt is shown by other powers. There are powers which have been attempting to block aid. when people are facing hunger, mass famine, disease, and everything to prevent. Remember, most genocides, people die not by direct slaughter, but by exposure, death, by famine, by disease, all of those things. That's what happened there, and that included very often in the Nazi Holocaust too. Most people died not from direct shooting or gassing, but from many other reasons. Okay, 15.2, Israel should take effective measures to prevent the destruction and ensure the preservation of evidence related to allegations of genocide. Okay, 2 judges, 15-2, were in favor of that. And finally, Israel shall submit a report to the court on all measures to give effect to this order within 1 month from the date of this order. Okay, 15-2. So if the Wall Street Journal and the Wall Street Journal did directly lie about the result of this, okay, all right, in fact, it's overwhelmingly in favor of South Africa's case. The court ruled in favor of South Africa's case. Okay, and since then, more evidences of incitement have come up, but we don't have time to discuss all that. You can read that on the website, enlightenmentlegacy.org. Maybe I should just drop the link into the chat in case somebody wants to see. Where is the chat?
Leah, I could be wrong, but didn't
Yeah.
the UN definition of genocide include dehumanization before?
Oh, it always includes dehumanization, you know. So when the president of Israel said, we are dealing with human animals and we shall treat them as such, and there are no uninvolved civilians, that was a dog whistle of incitement to dehumanize Palestinians within the Strip, and repeatedly people have said, we're going to kill them all. You know.
Yes, I agree, but it seems like in the ruling they didn't include dehumanization as a qualifier or an aspect of genocide.
No, it falls under the definition of incitement to commit genocide.
Oh, I see. It falls under that. Okay.
That is, dehumanization is direct incitement to commit genocide. Correct. And of course, the Benjamin Netanyahu, and it's been repeated by, you know, this was part of the case which was submitted to the International Criminal Court, was the Prime Minister's words appealing to our Holy Bible about the destruction of Amalek, man, woman, child, baby, everything, okay, that Netanyahu did, and President Herzog's statement that there are no uninvolved civilians. IDF soldiers were filmed themselves actually, and posted it on TikTok and everything, singing a rhyming song in Hebrew about, we are finishing off Amalek and there are no uninvolved civilians, and they were dancing to that. That is direct. It was clear that soldiers on the ground understood what the prime minister and the president of the Tel Aviv regime meant, and that it was genocidal incitement. And there are multiple examples. You can go read the 84 page case, which has 574 footnotes yourself. It's all linked on my website there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Doc.
That Israel, for generations, has been bullied, and so they have this generational trauma that has taken a long time and is very deep. And then we have the more recent trauma, which was the Holocaust and all of that. Then they found a place where they felt like they could be safe. And now they are perpetrating that the trauma, generational trauma that they have is that's what's behind the fact that they now are the perpetrators of trauma than somebody else. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
No, I don't think that necessarily has to be the order of causation. I'm just saying that in that basket of trauma, like all the things that you mentioned, Holocaust, being displaced, I think there are over 1,000 Jewish expulsions in European history. There's a lot of trauma balled up in there. Right now, there is um, a field of study called epigenetics that I think is sort of, I wouldn't say totally challenging, what they call Mendelian genetics, or like what we know as genetics classically, but I think it's more of an increased understanding of how we inherit our traits, and we can also inherit traumas, apparently, and that can affect the way we perceive our environment, the way we absorb nutrients, the way our body prioritizes absorbing nutrients and things. It's a very complicated topic, but I'm saying that in the midst of all of those traumas, one of the traumas that we tend to miss in regards to the what we call, quote unquote, the Jewish population, is that they have for some time, be it for a defense mechanism or whatever reason, been on this tip of indoctrinating themselves and their young with the idea that they're entitled to do harm to surrounding populations. And even though it sounds to us like just white supremacy or a privilege or a mere delusion, what I'm saying is that manifests as a trauma, on subsequent generations, because it's something that they've been lied to about, that they have to get awakened to, like Lee was speaking about with regards to the DNA test. The DNA tests are illegal because they don't want to traumatize their population with the reality that they've been lied to, you know, and that is traumatic. That is extremely traumatic. A verse in the King James Bible comes to mind. I think it's Jeremiah 16:19, that the heathen will come from the ends of the earth and say, "Oh, woe is us! We've just inherited lies from our forefathers." These people who thought we were so privileged and who were running things are gonna hit the wall, so to speak, at a point and discover, oh my gosh, we've been deceived about reality. And yes, that's traumatic, is what I'm saying. But I'm just saying I mentioned that to say that's one of the traumas that we miss because we're so used to, I was just talking to Lee about this yesterday. We're so used to kind of thinking in our own homes negatively about a group of people that we see as doing wrong to someone else. We tend to overlook their traumas and the things that hurt them, that got them to be the way they are, as a population. And that's a really tough subject to line up to, because we start feeling racist, and we start feeling bad because we're looking at this thing. But it's important to consider what causes a whole population of people to cheerleader a genocide right before our eyes. It's terrifying to see these TikTok videos with them dancing, and celebrating with dead children's bodies behind them. That's something had to happen. Something went wrong there, because I believe that we are inherently, a cooperative species that could do a lot better than we do, but we yield to bullies. There's also something about us that we will cooperate with massa. You know, they went around and recruited the strongest people in the world and found these big black people to do their slave work, and these people wouldn't revolt, you know? So cooperative, just trying to get by. Okay, massa, yes, whatever you say, you know? It's our natural state of being, but we've got to break out of those cycles every once in a while, you know. And yeah,
Well,
but all that to say, I hope I answered your question.
I just, as a biologist, I'm going to step in just a little bit there about epigenetics, the relation of epigenetics and genetics. Mendelian genetics and other genetics still hold. Epigenetics just means upon genetics. This is the methylation and other ways in which genes are expressed. Okay, that is something over and above. There is a generational trauma so for instance, this has been done in survivors of genocide, Holocaust, and so forth, to about 4 generations. So, for instance, I've seen it in my own family. I'm a second generation from genocide survivors. My mom was first generation, and my grandparents on the maternal side were generation 0. They were ground 0 as survivors themselves, and trauma. And we saw that epigenetic trauma can go down generationally like that. As far as African victims of the transatlantic slave trade and centuries of slavery, particularly in the New World and in the Mediterranean world, not resisting, there were hundreds of revolts. And there are those who argue that it was actually slave revolts that made slavery impossible to keep going on. Exhibit A, of course, is Haiti, which was the first successful slave revolt in history that ended it, on that island. So this is not contrary to Mendelian genetics or regular inheritance. This is a surcharge on top of that. And it can happen culturally too. So for instance, 1,000 years of religious wars and what was commonly called the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages in Europe, many European nations went and formed colonies and carried their cultural trauma and imposed it in the era of colonization around the world as well. And that's more cultural inheritance than strict epigenetics or genetics. So just that would just be a slight, yeah. Oh, yes, we do have another meeting that is coming into the church. And we are nearing the time of closing. Any final comments from anybody?
To tack on to what Doc had just said, I definitely think that certainly for individuals, that process of harsh disillusionment is a big contributor to people's experience of depression. And so to do some kind of harsh disillusionment on a societal scale would have disastrous implications, I think. And in response to what you were saying, Tinka, I do think there is an element of that collective trauma from the Jewish population with respect to the Holocaust, in the sense that they came from this very strict fascist regime, and to come from that, to be born in that culture, they are also not immune to propaganda. And so rather than taking away from that experience that a fascist, racially based regime is bad, that we shouldn't do. Instead, the conclusion was, well, that's okay as long as we're the ones at the top of the pyramid. And so that is the structure that those Jews from Europe reproduced, because that is what they experienced.
Well, and there's another thing too. Let's remember how many Holocaust survivors despise the Zionist project. They say, don't do this in our name. You're dishonoring what we do by traumatizing another people. And there's some very strong voices and children of some very strong voices. And it is to be immensely, we should be really grateful for the fact that there's a whole generation of Jewish young people in the West now that don't buy the Zionist myths anymore.
Yep. So many different ways to see abusers.
Yes.
People who were abused grow up to be abused. So I'm trying to see that correlation here.
And there are demagogues who like to manipulate abuse in the past to say, oh, isn't it terrible how everyone treated you? Now let's go do something else to somebody else. Remember, that was done with Germany, which was very unjustly dealt with after the Versailles Treaty, right? And they said, oh yeah, look at these communists, look at this, all this stuff. So, and and they're looking for scapegoats. And of course they started traumatizing, and victimizing, and ultimately trying to exterminate populations they considered to be inferior and the source of their troubles.
I would encourage everyone to really revisit the genre, the cinematic genre of zombie movies. I know they're kind of corny and B movies, but philosophically, what zombie movies have been reflecting in our psyche is really what the cutting edge of human psychology is coming to find out. That is that hurt people. They tend to, and that even cluster B personality disorders are, you can contract them, being in the public, being abused yourself, being gaslit, you can actually contract narcissism, and this is how it's passed down and passed throughout cultures, and it becomes a phenomenon, epidemic.
Yes.
One more thing, I just wanted, when we were talking about the genetic, right, about being against the law to post that publicly. I guess when Doc was talking, it hit me as it probably would be, because I was like, I don't understand, but I think it would be as if, let's say, a group of white supremacists here in the United States doing a DNA analysis, suddenly find out that they have Black heritage in their past, how traumatic that would be to them, how they resolve their present thinking and actions if they knew that they suddenly are part of the group that they're railing against. So I think that may be why they don't want anyone to know that there may be heritage or anything like that. Because it would be difficult, maybe it would make people stop and rethink perhaps.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry, we have one. Well, it'll be March 3rd. And we're trying to get more religious leaders, because we want people of the Abrahamic faiths, as well as those of us who are outside. Today was we're still background laying in some ways, but we would like to have people talking with each other. Our goal here is, here's a centrally located place. We could be a neutral ground for talks between leaders who can influence their own communities. Yeah. Correct. And some of us are just we're all taxpayers. Some of us would just like to not have our money not to become complicit in crimes, not only there, but around the world on different continents. We don't want to be complicit in those crimes. Yeah, that's right. Taxation was representation. Yeah. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Doc. Hey, we'll catch up later.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.